Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, is one of the most profound aspects of human psychology. It bridges the gap between individuals, fostering connection, compassion, and moral responsibility. While modern psychology has explored empathy in depth, its philosophical roots can be traced back to thinkers like Arthur Schopenhauer, whose insights into human nature and moral conduct remain influential. Schopenhauer's philosophy, particularly his concept of compassion as the foundation of morality, provides a unique lens through which to examine the psychological underpinnings of empathy. Schopenhauer's view on empathy and compassion. Arthur Schopenhauer was a German philosopher known for his pessimistic worldview and his emphasis on human suffering. Unlike many of his contemporaries who focused on reason and rationality, Schopenhauer believed that human behavior was primarily driven by the will, a blind, irrational force that governs existence. However, he also recognized that genuine moral action arises from an intrinsic sense of compassion, which he saw as the direct expression of empathy. Schopenhauer argued that the foundation of ethical behavior is the recognition of others' suffering as akin to our own. He believed that true morality does not stem from religious doctrines or social contracts, but from an intuitive understanding that another's pain is not fundamentally different from one's own. This concept is closely linked to what modern psychology terms affective empathy, the emotional resonance we feel when witnessing someone else's distress. For example, imagine a person witnessing a homeless individual struggling in the cold. According to Schopenhauer, a truly empathetic person does not help because of societal expectations or personal gain, but because they viscerally feel the other's suffering as if it were their own. This idea aligns with contemporary research on mirror neurons, brain cells that activate when we observe others' emotions, allowing us to internally simulate their experiences. Empathy in modern psychology. While Schopenhauer's philosophical approach to empathy is compelling, modern psychology provides a scientific framework for understanding it. Empathy is often categorized into two primary types. Cognitive empathy, the ability to understand another's perspective and emotions intellectually. Affective empathy, the emotional response that arises from perceiving another's feelings. Research suggests that empathy is deeply embedded in human biology. Studies using functional MRI scans show that when people observe others in pain, the same neural circuits associated with experiencing pain are activated in the observer. This neurobiological response supports Schopenhauer's argument that we intuitively perceive others' suffering as our own. The role of empathy in society. Empathy is essential for building social cohesion and moral societies. It influences everything from personal relationships to global humanitarian efforts. Without empathy, societies would struggle with issues like inequality, discrimination, and violence. For instance, during humanitarian crises, nations and individuals who exhibit high levels of empathy are more likely to contribute aid and support. This principle can be observed in historical movements such as the abolition of slavery, civil rights activism, and contemporary refugee assistance programs. These efforts often stem from the ability of individuals to empathize with the oppressed and act accordingly. Challenges and the dark side of empathy. Despite its benefits, empathy is not without its challenges. Excessive empathy can lead to emotional burnout, particularly in professions that require constant engagement with suffering, such as healthcare, social work, and counseling. Additionally, empathy can be biased. People tend to empathize more with those who are similar to them in race, culture, or ideology, leading to in-group favoritism and even moral blind spots. Schopenhauer acknowledged that while compassion is the highest moral virtue, human nature is often selfish. Thus, cultivating empathy requires conscious effort. Psychological studies support this, suggesting that practicing perspective-taking exercises and engaging in diverse social interactions can enhance one's empathetic abilities. Friedrich Nietzsche's critique of conventional morality and empathy. He was deeply skeptical of moral frameworks that emphasize self-sacrifice, pity, and universal compassion. He argued that traditional morality, particularly Christian morality, was designed to benefit the weak at the expense of the strong. According to his work, empathy, particularly in its most extreme form as pity, can be a tool of control that hinders human flourishing rather than fostering genuine virtue. For example, he criticized what he called slave morality, a system of values that elevates meekness, humility, and compassion as moral ideals. He believed that such morality arises from resentment, a psychological state in which the powerless develop moral systems that justify their weakness while demonizing strength, ambition, and self-assertion. Within this framework, empathy is often wielded not as an authentic expression of human connection, but as a means to manipulate and subdue those with power and vitality. Empathy and the will to power. He posited as the fundamental driving force behind all human action. He saw life as a struggle for growth, excellence, and self-overcoming, rather than a passive existence defined by suffering and compassion. From this perspective, empathy can sometimes act as a deterrent to personal and societal advancement. Consider the example of a highly talented individual who feels deep empathy for those who struggle. While empathy can lead to benevolent actions, I would caution against excessive concern for others if it comes at the cost of one's own self-development. He argued that individuals should strive to cultivate strength, resilience, and personal greatness, rather than allow themselves to be emotionally burdened by the suffering of others in a way that stifles their potential. The dangers of excessive empathy. Modern psychology recognizes both the benefits and potential downsides of empathy. While empathy fosters cooperation and moral responsibility, excessive empathy, sometimes referred to as empathetic distress, can lead to burnout, manipulation, and self-sacrifice at the expense of one's own well-being. This philosophy aligns with this cautionary stance. For instance, in the realm of politics and leadership, excessive empathy can cloud judgment. A leader who is overly empathetic may struggle to make difficult but necessary decisions, prioritizing individual suffering over long-term progress. One would even argue that true leadership requires a balance between understanding others and maintaining the strength to act decisively, even in the face of emotional difficulty. Empathy as a means of strength, not weakness. Despite his critiques, he did not entirely dismiss the value of empathy. Rather, he advocated for a higher form of empathy, one that does not stem from weakness or pity, but from strength and self-mastery. This aligns with the idea of amor fati, the love of fate, which involves embracing all aspects of existence, including suffering, with a sense of power rather than victimhood. Reinterpreting empathy in light of Nietzsche's philosophy. In contemporary society, these warnings about empathy remain relevant. While compassion and understanding are necessary for social harmony, unchecked empathy can lead to emotional exhaustion, societal stagnation, and manipulation. Are we practicing empathy from a place of strength or from a place of weakness? Are we allowing empathy to inspire action and greatness? Or are we using it as an excuse to avoid difficult truths and necessary growth? These insights offer a provocative re-examination of empathy, challenging us to rethink its role in ethics, psychology, and human flourishing. Rather than viewing empathy as an inherent good, it compels us to ask deeper questions about its function, its potential for manipulation, and its relationship to personal strength. By adopting a balanced perspective, one that integrates empathy with resilience and the will to power, we can navigate the complexities of human connection in a way that fosters both individual greatness and meaningful social bonds. His Psychology of Empathy, a Robert Greene perspective. Empathy is often seen as a virtue that strengthens human relationships, promotes understanding, and fosters cooperation. While traditional discussions of empathy focus on its moral and emotional dimensions, Robert Greene, author of The 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction, and The Laws of Human Nature, offers a more strategic perspective. Greene views empathy not simply as a passive feeling, but as a powerful tool for influence, persuasion, and mastery over social dynamics. Through his lens, empathy is both a means of deep connection and a mechanism for achieving strategic advantage in personal and professional relationships. Empathy as a tool for power and influence. Robert Greene argues that the ability to understand and anticipate the emotions and thoughts of others is essential for gaining influence over them. Unlike conventional views that frame empathy as a purely altruistic quality, Greene highlights its practical applications. He suggests that highly successful people, leaders, negotiators, and social influencers possess a heightened sense of empathy that allows them to read people's motivations, adapt to their needs, and subtly guide their decisions. For example, in the 48 Laws of Power, Greene emphasizes the importance of entering the minds of others to predict their reactions and maneuver accordingly. This aligns with the psychological concept of cognitive empathy, the ability to intellectually grasp another person's perspective without necessarily sharing their emotional state. Consider a skilled negotiator who, instead of rigidly pushing their agenda, carefully observes the other party's emotional cues, subtly mirroring their concerns and presenting solutions that align with their desires. By demonstrating an understanding of their position, the negotiator builds trust and gains leverage, making it more likely that the deal will favor them. The role of empathy in seduction and persuasion. Greene also explores empathy in the context of persuasion and attraction, particularly in the art of seduction. He argues that the most effective seducers possess a deep understanding of human nature, allowing them to tailor their approach to the vulnerabilities, desires, and insecurities of their targets. A clear example of this is the way charismatic leaders or influencers craft their messages to resonate with their audience. They do not speak in abstract terms, but instead use language, stories, and emotions that directly appeal to the specific concerns of their followers. This ability to emotionally engage others, drawing them in through psychological mirroring, is a form of strategic empathy. Take historical figures like Napoleon Bonaparte or modern-day business moguls like Steve Jobs. They didn't just dictate their vision, they understood what people wanted to hear and shaped their messages accordingly. Their success wasn't solely based on their ideas, but on their ability to empathize with and influence the emotions of their audiences. Empathy and the art of war. Reading the enemy. Another dimension of empathy in Greene's philosophy is its role in strategy and competition. In the 33 Strategies of War, Greene emphasizes that understanding an opponent's mindset is crucial for outmaneuvering them. This aligns with the Sun Tzu principle. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Strategic empathy involves seeing the world through the eyes of competitors, anticipating their moves, and using this knowledge to maintain an upper hand. For instance, in corporate warfare, companies that succeed in the long run are those that deeply analyze consumer psychology and competitor behavior. Netflix, for example, disrupted the entertainment industry by not just offering movies, but by understanding the evolving behaviors and preferences of audiences before traditional media companies could react. The dark side of empathy, manipulation, and emotional control. While empathy is often celebrated as a noble trait, Greene warns that it can be weaponized. Some of the most dangerous manipulators, con artists, cult leaders, and even narcissists, use their understanding of human emotions to exploit others. A classic example is a scam artist who preys on people's hopes and fears. By appearing empathetic and mirroring the emotions of their targets, they create a false sense of trust, making their victims more susceptible to deception. Similarly, toxic relationships often involve one person leveraging emotional intelligence to control and gaslight their partner, subtly manipulating their perception of reality. Greene advises that individuals must not only develop their own empathetic skills, but also be wary of how empathy can be used against them. Recognizing when someone is using empathy for ulterior motives is just as important as cultivating it for personal success. Balancing empathy with emotional detachment. One of Greene's key insights is that empathy must be balanced with emotional detachment. While it is important to understand people's emotions, becoming overly absorbed in their suffering or concerns can cloud judgment and make one vulnerable to manipulation. In The Laws of Human Nature, Greene suggests cultivating a level of emotional distance when engaging with others. This does not mean being cold or indifferent, but rather maintaining a clear perspective that allows for rational decision-making. For example, a successful therapist or leader must be empathetic enough to connect with people's struggles, but also detached enough to provide objective guidance and make tough decisions when necessary. Conclusion: mastering empathy as a strategic skill. Robert Greene's perspective on empathy reframes it as a skill to be mastered rather than just an inherent trait. Whether in leadership, negotiation, persuasion, or personal relationships, those who understand and utilize empathy effectively can navigate social dynamics with greater ease and influence. However, Greene also warns of its potential for manipulation, urging individuals to be aware of both its strengths and dangers. By developing strategic empathy, one that combines emotional intelligence with discernment and self-awareness, individuals can achieve success while maintaining autonomy and integrity. In the end, empathy is not just about feeling for others. It is about understanding them deeply enough to shape interactions, anticipate reactions, and ultimately wield influence over the world around us. Remember, we are Indeceptor.